everybody. Good morning. Happy Thursday. It's Friday Eve. Only a few more hours till the weekend. So thanks for coming to session 2. Today's topic is about understanding behaviors. But before we jump in, we need to do our fun question, our fun little icebreaker. So today, I'm so curious, what would be your talent if you were Mr. or Mrs. Universe? So I'll give you a second to think about it. It doesn't have to be something you can do. You can get a little fantasy based here and wish you had the talent if you like. We won't make you demonstrate it on screen, but I can't promise you that your families won't ask you to demonstrate it when you get to their home, right? So I'm actually curious to know, Brittany, how many families were playing your music and asking you to sing when you got to their homes last time? And I didn't get any videos like I asked for. But with that, I can start. So just a quick reminder, I'm Mindy. I'm the program manager here for foster care services. And I think my talent would have to be, I would revert back to doing gymnastics again. I mean, I did it for like 21 years and well, I didn't start at birth. So what, maybe 17 years. So I think I would just have to pull some tricks out of that bag. Do you want me to call on people? Or are people ready to just volunteer? Okay, so popcorn style. Emma, can I pass it off to you?
Sure. I'm Emma. I'm the family support specialist, and I think I would choose to solve a Rubik's Cube. I don't know if that's really a talent, but I want to make it known that I cannot do it. And really, I've never successfully done it. But I'd like to imagine that I could, or juggling. I feel like that would be fun too. Can't do that either, but it's a nice thought.
I'm on mute, but in your fantasy, can you juggle like all different things like knives and fire and stuff?
Why not?
I love it.
I can't do it, so I could imagine. Yeah, lots of different things.
That. All right, you can pass it off to whomever, please.
Okay, Lauren.
So, I would like to be able to do this again. It would take me some time and practice, maybe about a week of consistent working on this. But my talent for talent shows when I was in high school was that I used to be able to recite from heart the first 200 numbers of pi. I would like to be able to do at least that much again. I know it's dorky, and I got bored one spring break when I was like 16, and I would like to kind of work on that memory muscle of mine and be able to do that again. I used to have somebody sit, like whoever in the audience would sit with a note, with a book that had all the numbers so that they could fact check it.
So I have to ask, is it just numbers that you're good at memorizing, or is it memory stuff?
The way that I the way that I was able to remember it, and oddly enough, I think that this is actually more interesting than just remembering. And it goes to show how the brain works, all the different parts work together. So the way that I would practice it was by typing it out, using the number pad on the keyboard. And so while I was doing it, I knew the muscle memory of all of the numbers. So I'd sit there and you could see my hand going at all of the different keys to do it, because it was just muscle memory at that point, almost.
How interesting. What a great story. Thank you for sharing that. You can pass it off to whoever you choose.
Impressive. So I have Ellie next to me on my screen. Oh, and I'm Lauren. I'm the placement coordinator. I'm so sorry.
I'm Ellie, FFT clinician, one of them. I don't know if this is a talent. You guys heard of mind over matter. So I think that's a real thing. And I think that because with my own kids, I'm very ticklish on my knees, right? Don't tickle me on my knees because but really, if you sit there and concentrate and it's not going to be ticklish, I can manage people tickling me. Like, it's something that I hope to maybe someday just evolve a little more, because it does work. Like, if you really concentrate, and almost like a meditation, and you're like, all right, this is going to be what it's going to be, you can actually do it. So I do believe in that, because it's slowly but surely I've been trying to work on different things. But yeah, maybe one day it'll evolve to more. I don't know.
We might have to work on that together, because I am ticklish everywhere. Ellie, can you please pass it off?
All right, let's go with Brittany. Did you go? Brittany? No, you. Brittany.
Hi, I'm Brittany. I am the other clinician for the FFT program. And of course, my skill would be dancing. It's what I do every day, all day. Singing, dancing. If I could sing, oh my gosh, it would be amazing. No more social work life for me if I could sing. But I'm really good at dancing, so that would definitely be my talent. And I am going to pass it. I'm sorry, I really wasn't paying attention. So I'm going to say Sam. Did you go? Okay, so I'm passing it to Sam.
I'm Sam. I do the recruiting and marketing stuff. I think my talent would have to be trapeze. I can't do it whatsoever, but that would be fun to do.
Like flying.
Absolutely.
Just to go back, because Brittany didn't, Brittany was awesome. She was rapid, but I really want a video of Brittany dancing. So whoever gets it. Sam, thank you so much. Can you pass it off?
There's also Photoshop. We could always Photoshop Brittany dancing.
And we happen
we
to
can
know
also-
Sam had some talents in that.
We can also Photoshop Sam onto a trapeze.
That's going to be next week's staff meeting. I'm going to pass it to Michelle.
Hi, I'm Michelle. I do training and recruiting for foster care. A hidden talent, I would say I would like to sing, however, not off key. So just putting it out there. Mariah.
Thank you, Michelle.
Michelle, I hear that very, very deeply. I'm Mariah. I'm the FFT clinical supervisor. And when you first asked that question, Mindy, I immediately flashed back to Miss Congeniality, where she twirls the batons with fire coming out of the ends. And I think I can't do it. Like, let's be clear, I would burn the stadium down, but I think that's what I would want to do, is do that baton twirling with the fire coming out of the ends of it.
I thought you were going to say the whole glasses thing.
I mean, either one would work. I agree.
All
Or
right.
you could kick butt. That would work too.
Any of those would be ideal for me, all of which I probably can't do. So yes, any of them would be ideal.
Oh, thank you guys so much. That was so much fun. And I love learning these different things about you guys. As I said before, the topic today is understanding behaviors. We know that there's a stigma that is associated with being a foster child, right? Most of the time we hear that kids in foster care, they're difficult, they're disrespectful, they're challenging, they're hoodlums, right? There's all these negative connotations. And so when confronted with a challenging behavior, instead of looking at and labeling the child, it's helpful to try and translate that behavior. What is that meaning behind it? And trying to say, this is not the child isn't the challenge. But if we look at what happened to them, it helps us not take that behavior personally, and we can understand what might be behind that behavior, right? We talk about the reframing. We talk about the intent, right? And so in the sessions that you guys are doing, we're working to bring good intentions forward from the parents. And so we have do also work to bring forward what is the intent of that behavior. And this is going to help bring strengths to the forefront, excuse me. So one of the things that can really, really help in understanding each other and help us reframe and understand everyone's intention is active listening. So I'm curious if you guys have ever talked about active listening in your sessions or used it or helped your foster parents use it as a skill. Do you use it as or do you use it as a staff / therapist / support worker? Let's start there.
So yes, I think that's, I mean, yes, I have used it in sessions, but I also think just in general, active listening is one of those things that can be so challenging to do because we want to jump in, right? We want to jump in, we want to solve a problem, we want to fix something, we want to give our own 2 cents. So I think just that notion of how powerful active listening can be to just hear somebody else, hear their story, hear what they have to say without and letting go of that need to want to fix and transform something can be very, very difficult, but it is so beneficial and so powerful.
Yeah. So Mariah, actually, you brought up a good point. Like we want to jump in and fix it. And active listening is not that. How would you define active listening? How would you explain it to somebody?
I'm not sure if this is the exact way to do it, but one way that I do active listening is by being quiet, focusing, listening, and when somebody's done speaking about something, especially if it's something that we're working on together, before giving any advice or giving any feedback on it, I will explain what I heard from them to make sure that I understood what they're trying to communicate to me correctly. Because when you think about it, all of our words that we give are us just trying to communicate a thought that isn't necessarily formed into the right words to give to somebody else. And then it's our job on the other side to then interpret those words to get the thought, the feeling, the situation from that person. So before even jumping in even after they've finished speaking, you've listened with, okay, well, here's where we go next. Just ensuring that and showing them that you were listening by saying, okay, so this is what I'm hearing from you. Or let me know if I'm understanding you correctly or incorrectly. I think that goes a long way and shows somebody that you are really listening and trying to understand.
Yeah. So like before we can put a meaning behind a behavior, we sort of have to figure out where we know, right? Like, do we even understand what they're telling us? We can't, otherwise we're ascribing our own perception and our own biases to that behavior. And so really active listening can play a huge part in that translation. Did everybody get a chance to watch the video? The F the file video. What did anybody think about her and her notion of sort of rewriting that file so that we're being honest, but we're using that sort of active listening piece to look at what is underneath, right? Where is this coming from, as opposed to just labeling the negativity?
I feel, that video was great. Coming from a foster child, 12 different homes. So you just get a better perspective, a new perspective, and see, because we get these cases, and you read the file and what's on our thoughts and foster parents' thoughts, and you see all this negative behavior, all these negative things. But I guess, what she said, it is important to see the good things. So why not bring forth, the good things that this child, youth, teenager, whatever, has done, or when you meet them, and can't think of the word I want to say, but just enhance those skills that you see of them, and say them, and every time you see the child or anything, just give a positive thing to them. But I really did like that. It just it opens your eyes. It opens your eyes from somebody coming in from the foster care system, and yeah, don't judge the book by its cover, right?
Yeah, Brittany, did you? So I'm not gonna lie, Brittany, when I saw the opening the first time I watched this, I was like, oh my God, this is Brittany. Brittany's gonna love this video, right? Because she came out dancing. And then when she started talking about all the negatives, I was like, she lost Brittany. She's not dancing anymore.
So yes, the beginning of the video is very interesting. I did love all her bad dancing. It was very, very interesting. But I love how she did tie it into the point of that was the first impression that you got of her. And many times for our foster kids, the first impression that they get is us receiving that referral or receiving those charts and having disclosure meetings with our foster parents, and how her bad dancing was the first thing that's all I could think of throughout the video. So the point was clearly made. But one of the main things that I loved throughout the whole video was her saying that a lot of these charts have, all these negative things and all these traumas and all these histories, but never list like the hobbies or the characteristics of the child. So I always just try to keep that in mind when because being part of the foster care system, many times you're adding to that chart. So I just want to make sure that when I am doing my write-ups personally, that I am listing those hobbies. Is the kid artistic? Or is the kid or is the child into sports? Is the child, just trying to highlight some things about their personality, their characteristics, and their hobbies, versus just going in first and foremost with their traumas, I think help out a lot, because then we can really try to connect the foster kid to the foster child if we have those similar interests. So I thought that was just a really great point that she brought out at the beginning of the video.
I love that, Brittany. I'm curious, when we have disclosure meetings, do we talk about hobbies, interests, want to try, like even if they haven't had the ability to try something yet based on circumstances, things that they are interested in trying or looking forward to trying?
So in the disclosure meetings that I have, I list, even in my little write-ups, I try to write up everything that's characteristic about the child. If they are into art, painting, crocheting, or if they are, and I always try to ask them, like, if you could have a future job, what would it be? And I kind of bring that from what the child says to the meetings so that you could kind of get to know more about the child, so that the foster parents know what they're getting into, like personally, what are their deep interests. Or if you're a really busy foster parent and this child is really into sports, then maybe we need to find a better match, because we know that the sports is your outlet. It is your therapy. So we want to make sure that we continue with that as well.
Yeah, I love that. I also, something she's talked about, she gave the story of her coach who told her like she was great, and from that point forward, and it made me think about in our, do we ever tell fun stories about our kids even in any meetings, disclosure meetings, meetings when we have provider meetings, right? Do we talk about the stories that made us laugh, that endear the kids? And I'm just curious if you guys have ever had experiences where you've been in a meeting and it's not just highlighting those challenging times, but it really is focusing on the uniqueness and the praiseworthy things.
It actually struck me. I was in a meeting earlier this week for a kid that is eventually going to come into our FFT program, and the current treatment provider was just talking about some of the things that had transpired recently. And she told a couple of really just like funny stories around things he had done that were humorous and ways he had responded. And just, it was brief. It wasn't intense, but it was like a one-liner that he had said that was funny, and she made her chuckle. And I had that providers meeting shortly after watching this video, and it struck me like, okay, of course we need to talk about some of the behaviors, right? Because there is this balance between how do we support that process, but also be a part of rewriting the narrative for this kid. And she just did such a lovely job of encapsulating all of it in a way that what I took away from the meeting wasn't the list of his behaviors. It was chuckling about how this kid had a great sense of humor and was pretty witty. And she just did a lovely job with that. And I think that's something that we could all probably be a little bit better about sometimes, honestly.
I totally agree with you. I mean, I know as this program transitioned over right into the FFT model, I had a case that was finishing up, and so most folks in FFT don't know the kid, the youth that I had worked with, but when I went out to visit him, he had such a sense of humor, and the things he would say, you know, yes, we had to talk about that he walked into someone's house uninvited, and yes, we had to talk about that he took something off the shelves from Walmart and walked out of the store with it and didn't pay from it. But we also needed to talk about the fact that he was planning a trip and was taking a chunky peanut butter sandwich with him. Like, and that was right. Like, those were, because it made him real. He wasn't just behaviors now. He was a true kid, who had some neglect that we needed to teach healthy behaviors to. And I don't remember working with him because he stole things from Walmart per se. I remember working for him for the one-liners. I remember working with him because he knew everything about Los Angeles because he was going to move there. Like, those are the things I remember. And I guess after watching this video, it sort of re-inspired me that when I am working with families, like, I want to ask, tell me the good things about your week. Call me for the good things. And I guess I'm wondering if it sort of changed or shifted, made you want to shift at all. Sorry, that was hard to get out.
I think for me, one of the things where I was like, ooh, like that hits a little bit. You need to be more mindful of this, is when she was speaking to the notion of, I was labeled as unadoptable, I was labeled as high risk, and how just hearing her say that and thinking about her at 13, 14, 15, that was the label she identified with. That was what was stamped on her case file. That was what she was told. And it was a moment. And then she went into talking about the coach and how he rewrote that narrative for her by speaking to her differently, by, giving her different labels, so to speak. And so for me in that moment, it was very powerful to think through, yes, we have to honestly present these kids to our foster families. Yes, we have to be open and talking about what are some of the challenges they might face, but that doesn't need to be the label for these kids. That doesn't need to be how we start off presenting them. It doesn't need to be the all-encompassing fact. So to answer your question, Mindy, yes, that was something where I was like, a simple shift in how I speak about a child coming into our care can change that narrative for them in such a powerful way.
So
Sam raising her hand. I love it.
I was just making sure everybody was good. So my thought was this: if I was a foster parent, yes, you need to know the specifics, but I want to know what they're into so that I can prepare for that child to come into my home. Like, if they like sports, let's get a basketball or football or whatever. If they like crafts, I mean, I have a million crafts, so that would be perfect. But, thinking at it from a foster parent perspective, that's how I would go about that. And I think that it would be useful and, more humanizing, I would think.
I love that word, humanizing.
And Sam, just to piggyback off of that, I think you're right. Looking at it from the perspective of these prospective foster parents, we we want them to support these kids in rewriting their narrative. We want them to see these kids as more than their behaviors, as more than just this list of experiences or behaviors or traumas or whatever the case may be. And I think in asking them to do that, we have to be a little bit better about also doing that and being mindful of how we support them in that process. And you're right, Sam, presenting it from that perspective, because that is what we want foster parents to do. We want them to be able to see behind the behavior, see that noble intent, all of those pieces. So I think just starting it with us and then allowing that to trickle down is really beneficial.
That's great points, you guys. So we've talked a lot about the behaviors and translation of those behaviors for the youth. What about for us as adults? What about us as workers? What about the foster parents who are setting the rules, who are having many more conversations with these youth than we are, DCF workers, who are often talking about legal things? How do we look at those behaviors? And how do we think the youth translates those behaviors? And how can we help make that more positive? Do we need to? Let me start there. Do we need to consider adult behaviors in these interactions at all? Better place to start. You're all shaking your head at me. Well, most of you are shaking your head at me.
I'll answer. So yes, I do think that we need to take in consideration our behaviors and how we present when we're in the room as well. DCF as well, when they kind of come into homes. There are many times where I've been in homes and it's like, oh, my worker's coming. Ugh, I hate them. And I'm like, but you're here talking to me like.
Brittany, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but that was the perfect teenage impression.
And I'm like, well, I'm here with you. Like, you talk to me every week. How come you're not talking to your worker? And it's like, well, they just come in, they talk, and then they leave. So maybe just taking that time to do something with the child. And it could be something as small as, hey, tell me a proud moment. Tell me a time this week where you felt, proud or good about yourself. And I also try to remind foster parents that, with the FFT program, you don't always have to call when it's a concern. You can call us when something great happens and something positive happens. So when we go into the home, we can already have that knowledge to be able to tell the kid that we were proud of them. Tell the child, you did amazing this week. I heard that you moved up on your soccer team. Like, that's amazing. You've been working really hard at that. So just making sure we have that lines of communication, but then also showing them in sessions how we can acknowledge the great things so foster parents can take it from there as well. And hopefully it can be a daily thing to change their narrative.
I love that, Brittany. I think, one of the things I really like to do when I was doing direct sessions is I used to ask foster parents to take pictures of the good moments. You need to be careful. You need to qualify that they don't have to text it to you, because otherwise, if they do text it to you, clearly just, it's okay. Just don't forward it or anything of that nature. But I think that helps that helps adults and the youth be proud. Right. But I would say, let me see those pictures from the week. And that was a great way to help everybody relive that moment because it's captured. Any other concrete ideas for capitalizing on the positive and helping the adults engage in the positive? Because it's very easy to focus on the negative. We've said that throughout this conversation, but how do we focus on the positive?
I can speak if no one else is going to. Okay. I think it's really important, like, especially when having those serious conversations, especially like legal things. Like, I know that can be really overwhelming for any kid, any age. So I think it's really important, like, the way you articulate your words and like your tone of voice, because just like even adding a positive word in the serious conversation might just kind of make it like a little bit more light and less overwhelming and, difficult process for the child.
Yeah, especially at the end, right? Like even saying, hey, great job with this conversation. I know this could have been hard. Like it ends on a high as opposed to in this gloomy, dreary place. I really like that, Emma. That's a great, and go ahead.
I was just going to say, to kind of piggyback off that and take it back to where we started originally, you know, in considering that notion of rewriting the narrative for these kids, foster parents are rewriting the narrative around what these kids view as a parent figure, what these kids view as somebody who's an authority taking care of them. So I think just supporting both parties and recognizing that it's okay if things aren't always really positive. It's okay if mistakes are made and tensions get high, but we can regroup and we can go do something fun, or we can spend time together that we can let go of what that conflict was and we can move on from it. I think just, you know, what Emma was speaking to around, it can be serious, it can be difficult. That's part of the role of a foster parent, is to set boundaries, set limits, have some of these difficult conversations, but we can then move on from it. And that's a big piece of, I think, just rewriting that narrative for the kid as well.
Right, you bring up such a good point about being able to move on. When you guys are having to have a challenging conversation, or a conversation about a challenging behavior, do you work with your foster parents around consequences and what is an appropriate consequence, how long it should last, and how everybody can move forward from a challenging incident?
So yes, we definitely, especially me during my sessions, we definitely talk about different consequences. But the main thing that I like to try to help the foster parent understand is have the consequence match behavior, and just in that category. So what I mean by that is, let's say if the child is not going to school and the consequence is, let's say, I don't know, they lose a privilege or they lose their cell phone. Once they're, you know, because the situation dealt with school, that has nothing to do with, you know, it carrying over to making the conversation at dinner strictly about school. If they are doing good in sports, or if they're doing good in a different category, you can still have the consequence in one category, but, you know, not let it carry over and trickle over into every other category of their life. If school is something, you work on it, you set a consequence. Once the consequence is set, you know, you live out the terms of the agreement. But if something else is going really positive that week, or if they're doing good in something else, it's okay to mention that, even though it's not, because it's a different category. I don't know if that makes sense, but if it doesn't, I can explain it better.
Ooh.
You were muted, then you were unmuted, Mindy. There was a lot going on in that moment. I wasn't sure, but I'll jump in now. Brittany, I think that makes perfect sense. Honestly, I think you explained it really well. I think, to kind of piggyback off of that, something else that I've very recently worked with foster parents and kiddos on is, it's okay to have this conversation and implement consequences and let the consequences be the consequences. And then it's okay to go walk the dog together and laugh and joke. It's okay to play a board game together before, you know, to wrap up the night. It doesn't need to be a thing that then is overhanging and the rest of the day is ruined because this kid had a bad day at school, or whatever the case may be. And kind of just working on that. It's happened. Here's the consequence. Okay, now we've talked about it. Now we can transition, and it doesn't have to still be negative. It can be positive. It's okay to move on from that.
I love that almost like this is this section of our day, and now we're moving on to the next section of our day. And it's okay. It's okay that we had an oopsie, but our oopsie doesn't have to ruin everything. That's great. So we're coming to the end of our time today. Any final thoughts that anybody on this translating behaviors topic, active listening, focusing on the reframing and good intentions, that anybody has, that or a burning question that I didn't bring up a topic? Please, Brittany.
Oh, thank you. I just wanted to say in the video, she had stated that many times that the kids are labeled as bad kids. They're in the system because they're bad kids. But the reality of it is they're in the system because of abuse or neglect or something that happened to them. So we just want to make sure that, you know, when we are with these children and we are in the moment of things, and so even though they can be challenging, to understand that, you know, so they're not bad children. That was a bad situation that happened. And now we are here to provide a positive outlook on things and a positive way to move forward. A lot of our foster parents are, you know, doing a great thing, and they are doing so well with a lot of our teens. And I just want to mention that they're part of the positive part of their life that is moving forward. Even though we have situations that might bring the child back, they are helping us progress and helping them write that positive part of their story. So to make sure that they take time to acknowledge that as well.
I'm having such issues with my mute and unmute button. Brittany, thank you so much. That's so insightful. Our foster parents are so critical in this work, and they are all doing such fantastic implementation of this model. So I can't appreciate enough the shout out to them. And, you know, I think to your point, how many of our kids have that self-fulfilling prophecy of, well, they already think I'm bad, so I might as well, why should I put forth that effort? And I don't know if any of you have ever worked with youth who's just said, like, I'm bad. Like, you already, like, they said I'm bad. I see some of you nodding your head. And I guess I'm wondering how can we help reframe that? How can we help rewrite that narrative? For that, to that specific youth. Sorry, I didn't finish that. I didn't clarify that.
I think it's an area where we can overthink, right? And how do we challenge that? These kids that have been told for their entire life, they're a mess, they're difficult, they're whatever. And, you know, and some of these kids are so smart and they're like, well, I have trauma. It just is, I'm broken. Like, and they hear the words, they know the words, they take it in. I think it's reminding ourselves and foster parents that sometimes it is enough to just say, you're not a bad kid. That was a bad situation. You're a good kid. Let's move on. It doesn't always need to be, I think, this lengthy, long, drawn out, let's process. It can just be as simple as, no, you're not bad. That situation was bad. You're a good kid. We're going to figure it out. And just reaffirming those words on a regular basis.
I love the keep it simple, right? It doesn't have to be this profound Martin Luther King speech. Not that I'm not encouraging you to write something that profound, but I think, like you said, right in that moment, it can be simple. And that sometimes having sort of that go-to line is helpful in those stressful situations. I really like that. Excuse me, I'm, suffering or choking on my own stuff here. Anything else? Thanks, Sam. I see you laughing at me. It's fine. It's fine. It's almost Friday, guys. It's almost Friday.
I have something to add just to what Mariah just said. I think it's also important, like, especially in times where, like, a child, like, or teen may have made a bad decision. Like, I think it's important to remind them that, like, wow, that was a bad choice. And, that was, like, essentially their fault. Like, the reason behind everything and the reason they're in this situation and in foster care really isn't their fault, and it's out of their control. So it's just kind of a bad situation that they happen to fall into that's out of their hands.
Yeah, Emma, such a great point. And that also, that just because they may have made, even if the decision they made in a particular moment wasn't the best decision, right? It doesn't mean that they are a bad person. It means that they made a bad choice. They are still a good person. And that all of us have made mistakes and that we learn from them and we make better choices moving forward. And that, you know, that's what we're here for.
Always remember, one bad day doesn't make a bad month. One bad month doesn't make a bad year. So one situation cannot make a bad person.
Now that's profound.
You're welcome.
Brittany, you're in it to win it today with these little like nuggets of incredible value. That was well said. Well said.
Do you have that poster like sitting in front of you?
I need to print it out and put it on Etsy apparently, because this sounded really good.
It was very profound. And it, I don't even know where to go from there. Like, feel like we should just say bye.
I was gonna say, I feel like that's where you end it. Like that is the summation of legitimately what we were talking about. I loved it.
Okay. Well, is everybody in agreement that we can't beat that? Amazing. So, Brittany, I'm going to ask you to say it one more time.
So one bad day doesn't make a bad month, and one bad month doesn't make a bad year. So one bad situation can't make a bad person.
So, with that, I can't thank you all enough. And I wish you the best rest of your week. And you are all wonderful, wonderful people. Bye, everybody.